All right, everyone, we're ready to wrap this thing up and do the last assignment, and then I'll send you on to your reflection. So in order to do that, we're going to do the last application we're going to learn here today, and that is Google Forms. You'll notice that this is the orange set of instructions, and here it is right here. So I have opened those instructions up, and they are not really very big. So we've got, here they are, sliding across the screen. And it's pretty straightforward and pretty simple once again. Again, with your folder open, and you'll notice I have all of my stuff that I've made so far populating in here because we keep hitting new while we're in here. And when we create it, it automatically loads to this location. So we're going to go to new again. We're going to go to, instead of one of these three options, we're going to click more. And you'll notice there's Google Forms. Alright, once we get this little message, we'll hit create and share again, and Google Forms will show up for us. And like all the other previous assignments, we have an untitled scenario, so we're going to title this scenario and we're going to call it Assignment 8. And then down here it's automatically going to show Assignment 8, and that's the easiest place for you to change your title. If you change it here, it'll change it up there too. So just to give you a heads up, that's a possibility. Alright, so that's the simple part of creating the form. Now we're going to look at creating a quiz, editing and adding questions, adding a background, creating and evaluating a response form, and then sending the form itself. That sending the form in Forms is how you share a form. Okay, and so there's two parts to this. There's the form itself, and then there's the place where the answers to your questions go, the responses, if you will. So let's get started. This is your basic form outline. You can describe your form here. I'm going to put this as teaching observation form. And so basically this is going to be a form where my students who go observe, they're going to reply and answer their questions and plug them into this form that I'm going to send to them. Okay. Now, if you wanted to make yours into a quiz, you have to do something before you start asking questions. You're going to go over here to settings, and you'll notice there's a few options. When you send these out, you can collect email addresses. You can limit their response to one, and if you're giving an actual test or quiz, you're going to want to do that. You can also say respondents can edit after they submit, or they can see summary charts and text responses. I don't tend to use these very much unless it's a rare occasion, but hardly ever do I use this. Okay, so those are your general settings. There's some presentation settings, like do you want them to see a progress bar as they're working? Do you want to shuffle the questions? Or do you want to show a link to submit another response? Again, if you don't want them to submit another response, probably want to check that off. The last box is the quizzes box, and this is where you have the option to make it a quiz. And so you can click on this little button right here, and that'll make it a quiz, and it'll automatically release the grade immediately after each submission, so it can tell them if they got it right or wrong right away, or maybe later after a manual review is what you want to do. Mine aren't going to have any immediate response grades, so mine are all going to be essay related, but I'll show you some multiple choice and true false. You can also say that respondents can see their missed questions, they can see their correct answers, and they can see the point values. I tend to leave those up for simplicity's sake. So if you want to turn it into a quiz, by all means you'll hit save, and it'll look like this. Now when you make them put in a valid email address, that's going to allow them to get information back before they even take the quiz. And so when you do that, that also lets you know who took the quiz. Okay, and so when you make them, like I would do that for my students because they have a school-initiated email, and that would automatically identify them. If you're not going to do that, if you're not going to require the email address, I would tell you to make your first question every time what is your first and last name? Every time. And then make it a short answer. Google's gotten very intuitive, and it'll try to predict what kind of question you want. There are other options like paragraph, multiple choice, check boxes, and things of that nature. So I'm going to leave it a short answer because that's what I want, and I'm going to make it required because I want to know who is answering these questions. Okay, so keep that in mind. If you want to put an answer key behind it, which I don't know if you want to do that with this particular question, but let's say, let's go look at that for the next question. So that's one way to edit and add a question. So that's the first question right here is going to be after they put their email address in, what's your first and last name. If you want to add a question, it's right here. You can also add titles and descriptions in between. You can import questions from a different location. You can add an image. You can add video that's going to lead to a question. And you can also break them into sections. I'm not going to talk about sections in this particular class because I actually do a piece on that in my intermediate class that I think you would really enjoy. So if you want to know more about how to add sections and use that to change where the quiz directs your students, take my intermediate class and I'll help you figure that out. This is just to keep it simple. So we're going to add a question to start here, and maybe your next question is going to be a multiple choice question for those of you who want to give quizzes. So how many teachers are in the elementary school? And this is just a fun quiz to ask my students and to give you an example of multiple choice. So I don't want this to be a short answer. I want it to be a multiple choice, or in some cases multiple guess. And so once I come in here, I could put like 10, and if you want a second answer option, maybe 20, maybe 27, or maybe it's more like 63. Maybe your school district's really big or you're trying to throw them off, okay? And so this is how a multiple choice question would work. You can go to the answer key and you can select which one is correct. Let's say it's 27, and then you can go back to edit question after you've selected your answer. Oh, if you want to give it a point value, you can do that. And then you can go back to edit question, and they know right here it's worth 2 points. Okay? You can even make putting their name worth money or worth points. But the catch is if you make it required, this form won't be able to send, they won't be able to submit their responses until they've answered that question. So do you need to make this required? I mean, not necessarily. But it is nice to help kids not forget questions if they try to skip and then go back. It'll remind them that they need to answer all the questions. So as far as I'm concerned, making things required is not a bad thing. There are 3 dots to the right here, and so you can do a couple other things with this. You can give it a description, this whole question. You can go to section based on answer, and that again, that goes more to this whole section scenario, and I'm not going to go any further in depth. I just wanted you to see what this is and not just wonder. And you can shuffle option order, like what they're selecting here. It can be shuffled. But the big thing is, if you go to section-based answer, or section-based on answer, that's more relative to these sections here, and if you're putting sections in. Again, if you want to learn more about that, intermediate class. Okay, we're going to keep going. Let's add another question. This time, let's make it a checkbox question. All right, and in a checkbox question, you're going to probably want to give them options to select multiple items. So, what are the names of our schools in the district? And so they can check all that apply, and you can put your answers down here. So we got Discover, Challenger, and you can fill those out, and they can go through and select them, and you can, again, you can put an answer key to it and say which ones are correct and which ones aren't, and you can give points for however much it's worth. But that's just to show you what checkbox looks like. I'm going to go back to edit question. Let's say we were going to add a title or description in here. Maybe we have a new section. Maybe this is section 2, and section 2 is going to be about like school organizations, and then you can start your next set of questions with that. And maybe you don't even start it with a question. Maybe you start it with a picture, and you go to your Google Drive, and you find some images to put in there. And so I'm going to put in my Spirit section again, And there it loads the image, and immediately following the image, we could call this the den. And immediately following the image, we ask a question like, what does the above picture resemble in regards to a school organization? And then I'd hope they would answer in a short answer. I would make it that, and they could tell me, you know, what does this whole group represent? What club or organization could it possibly be? And again, this is teaching as a career, and then we could go further into, you know, what would be the responsibilities of that as sponsoring a spirit club and things of that nature. In addition, I wanted to show you video. So if we add video, you can do a video search. And maybe I search DECA because I want to do even more school organization stuff, and we can see if there's any videos about DECA. And all about DECA sounds good to me. What to wear, let's select it. And maybe I send the video, so this is DECA, and then we add another question. And we'll say, what is DECA about? And the video would help them answer that question. And maybe make that a paragraph. And you could even do a follow-up question, what is DECA about, and how does that determine your desire to run or organize a club or organization? And then they can give another long text answer about that. Again, just trying to show you examples of questions you could ask. That's probably not the greatest question, but it is an example. And it does allow you to put a video in there and show you how that works. Okay, so essentially we've gone through all the tools here. The last thing that I want to talk about is changing the background up here at the top and creating an evaluating response form. But if you want to change your theme or your background, there's options here. Obviously there's solid colors. If you click plus, you can pick maybe a little bit more specifically what your color is, so you can hit that and it'll obviously change right away. You can change your font styles too. They don't have a whole lot of options here. Maybe you want decorative, and so it changes the font of your lettering. You got to be kind of careful because some of that can be hard to read. I'm going to leave mine at formal just because I kind of like that. If you want to get really creative with your headers, you can choose an image, and they have some stock ones that you can use, or you can upload a photo as well. I kind of like the jelly beans. I think I'm going to go with jelly beans. Alright, and you'll notice that the jelly beans show up in the background. And then they also have this secondary color behind. I'm not a big fan of that. I'm going to go with this taupe grayish, bluish grayish, whatever that is, color. So that's just a simple way to change your theme and make your test maybe a little more lighthearted. Get your kids engaged and motivated to work a little bit. Can't say it would be a lot. Once you've done this, you can hit the little eye symbol up here to preview your quiz and see what it looks like. So this is what it would look like to the students. Looks pretty engaging, looks like fun. So I kind of like it. And you can even take it, fill it in, and see if it works for you and it does what you think it should do. But I'm going back to the editing screen. I close that view. The next thing that I want to do is I want to look at my responses. So responses are right here. Obviously we have 0 responses because we just made this, which is fine. That's not a big deal. But the one thing I want to show you in here is this create a spreadsheet option. I want you to click on that, and I want you to have this option selected, and I want you to hit create. We're going to create a brand new responses spreadsheet, and it will link itself to this form. So now any questions that are answered on this form that we just made, hopefully it's going to show up here, will populate into this particular spreadsheet. And this is where your answers, if you have a scoring that happens, this is where the score will be reflected. And this is the column in which that score will be reported. And there are options. If they plug their email address in, you can send this back to them right from this page, and it'll send them their score. It's pretty handy. Now we don't have any responses, so you're going to have to play around with that to get the score set. I don't have an example for you today, But if you want to know more about that, please ask, and I'll be happy to show you one of my former quizzes. I'm not going to require it for this particular class because it's just too complicated to have you send me an example of a scored quiz. I just want to see if you can make the form and make the response form. Okay, so in doing this, in making this scenario and making this, it should populate in my teaching as a career. There's the responses, and here's the form right here. So if you've already shared that with me in your folder, that's going to automatically show up and I'll be able to see those both there. Okay, now we're ready for the last step and we're ready to finish up the basic assignments of this course. So to do that, we're going to come back to this form. We're not going to look at responses anymore. We're going to look at questions. All right, and we're ready to send this out. And in order to do that, you're going to click send over here. And you've got a few options. You can send it via email, but we're not going to do that. We're going to send it via a link. All right. There is this shorten URL option. I don't ever use it because half the time, for whatever reason, it doesn't work. So I'm going to select this link and I'm going to hit copy. And I'm going to send that over to my WME. So just like we've pasted these other links in before, we're now ready. Whoops, got off on my lines there. We're ready for assignment 8 to be pasted. We're going to complete this as assignment 9, pasting our link in. I'm going to go ahead and type in assignment 8. And the action of putting this link in, as I select this and click link and Command V to paste my link in as my form, I'm going to hit apply, and voila! I am done with the major assignments here in Google Basic, and I'm ready to write my reflection. So I'm going to hit enter here, and I'm going to go ahead and add this piece to this set of video. I'm going to close these instructions, and I'm going to go to the last piece of information, your last slide on here, where it talks about the final video. And you know, this video is basically going to tell you how to send a form and write your final reflection. So the big things that I want you to look for, there's 2 parts. Part 1, be sure you have all the elements of your WME in. It'll look, these are the parts. And then the last thing is your reflection. So you type reflection at the top and then tell me, it says write a reflection below your WME that describes how you could use your own creation of a WME in the future. Additionally, please identify 3 key takeaways from this course that will help you moving forward in your teaching or career practice. So some people who are in this class are not teachers, but they have a career related to using this information. So you can finagle that however you want. Tell me how you think you'll use that in the future. Okay, 3 key takeaways. I should add back on assignment 8, when you're making your quiz, please try to come up with at least 5 questions for your quiz, and that can include writing your first and last name. That can be one of the questions, but please try to make 5 questions. Okay, so at this point, that's all I have for you. Thank you for taking the class. I hope you enjoy it. And again, please remember to ask as many questions as you need. Don't be afraid to communicate. I'm happy to help you as much as possible. And if there's some questions out there that I didn't cover in here but you want answered, give me an email. We'll see if we can find you an answer, or maybe I already know and I can just shoot you a quick email back and help you. All right. Really appreciate your time. Thanks again for all you guys do for kids. This is my way to try and expand my influence and broaden my horizon as far as how much I can change the world through Google. So thank you again. I'm Jim Zimmer, and this is the end of Google Basic.